I'm taking a look at Wanderstop, the latest game from the developer of the Stanley Parable. But to fully understand the significance of the themes of this game, I think we need to fully understand its creator. So I'm going to be looking at the history and impact of his earlier creations and raising the question of whether or not we can understand the feelings of a creator through their work. In 2009, while a film student at the University of Southern California, Davey Wreden began creating a Half-Life 2 mod. A keen gamer and wanting to break into development, he became frustrated with most widely released games being linear in how the player follows the game's narrative and wanted to create something which would answer the question of what would happen if you were allowed to break away from a game's set narrative to make your own choices. This work became the Stanley Parable. Despite his inexperience of working with the source engine leading him to make some limitations to what he wanted to create, the mod was highly well received and successful upon its release in 2011. So much so that he received offers to work for major game development companies, but instead decided to independently develop the Stanley Parable into a full release to realise its full potential. He enlisted the help of 19-year-old British game level designer William Pugh, and together, for 2 years, they developed the standalone version of the Stanley Parable, which released in 2013. The game was an immediate success, selling extremely well and almost instantly ensured for Davey that his student project would allow him to live comfortably as a game developer for a long time. But the sudden fame and success would prove to be too much for the young developer to handle. With the game's success brought a lot of attention upon Davey Wreden. He was messaged by fans, press outlets, businesses and others trying to get his attention, opinions, ideas, advice and much more. Davey, a self-proclaimed people pleaser, wanted to do it all. Reply to every email, take every interview, answer to every question and do everything that was being asked of him because he felt obligated for his work being in the public. He obsessed over validation for his work to make his efforts worth it to him, and this came to a head when gaming institutions were making their Game of the Year nominations. He pored over the lists as they were released, hoping to find the Stanley Parable nominated on them, each time filling the void he felt he had left by allowing ownership of his work into the hands of other people with the validation of awards. When all the press touring and awards were all over and he returned home, Wreden suddenly felt nothing. He was completely burnt out and fell into a deep depression, and only 6 months after the release of his highly critically acclaimed and commercially successful game, he started therapy. Part of his healing was to create a comic note about how he was feeling and later released it in a blog post entitled Game of the Year, excerpts of which I have featured in this video. Despite what he was going through before, during and after all of this, he had been working on another game. After I recently read about his struggles, I decided to play this game for the first time. In an unmistakably introspective work, The Beginner's Guide explores the psychoanalysis of a video games developer by looking at what they create. In the game, Davey as himself portrays the narrator who has a friend called Coda, a reclusive game designer who has been sharing game creations with him.
And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here.
You play through several of Coda's games in the order which they were sent to Davey, who analyses certain points about them and gives his feedback and also occasionally modifies things in the game to enhance their playability for you.
Apparently this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it. Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead. The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it. Like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system.
Based on the experiences of these games, he makes lots of assumptions about Coda's state of mind, assuming that he is sad, uninspired and lonely due to the themes presented in his work. He wants to help Coda, and Davey thinks that by sharing his personal creations with the world, the validation from people enjoying them would encourage him to begin creating again.
You can't stay in the dark space for too long. You just can't. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive. And all he needs to do is just start showing his work to people, to get some actual feedback on his games. It might get him out of isolation. I realized that I could be the one to initiate it, because it would never occur to Coda to start actively soliciting feedback, so what if I did it for him? If he could see the difference it would make to have more actual conversations with other human beings, would that bring him out of his mental spiral? Would it give him confidence in himself? Would it bring meaning back into his work?
But Davey is wrong. These were personal creations which Coda shared with him in confidence, and his effort to find some meaning and purpose behind the games was a misguided interpretation of his work. Davey's interference with his work was what actually caused Coda some frustration. Davey had then so irreparably broken Coda's trust by sharing his games with others that he no longer wants anything to do with him, and it soon becomes clear that the narrator was projecting his own insecurities onto Coda's work. He shared the games not to help Coda, but for his own need for validation for doing a good thing. Coda sends Davey one final game to look at before he cuts all contact with him. The game is overtly hostile to progression. After Davey inevitably modified the game to allow you to progress, Coda includes a message directly to Davey explaining his feelings.
I'm the reason that you stopped making games, aren't I? It's because of what I did. I poisoned it for you. I don't think I ever told you this, but when I took your work and I was showing it to people, it actually felt... it felt as though I were responsible for something important and valuable. And the people who played them, they treated me like I was important. They really listened and cared about what I had to say. Even though I was showing your work, I felt good about myself. Finally. For a moment, while I had that, I liked myself. And then you stopped, and I didn't have anything left to show people. I just had to be with myself. And as soon as that happened, there was no feeling at all. Nothing. Less than nothing. What does that mean? I'm afraid that I did something really stupid because I don't like myself. That's why I'm releasing this collection of your work, is because I haven't been able to find any other way to reach you. I've tried everything. And so a part of me has hope that if I put this compilation out into the world, and if I put my name on it, that maybe enough people will play it so that it'll find its way to you, so that I can tell you that I'm sorry. I know I screwed up. I need to feel okay with myself again. And I always felt okay as long as I had your work to see myself in. I mean, is something wrong with me? Because I know that I did an awful thing, and I'm doing it again right now. Like, I'm showing people your work, but I can't stop myself from doing it. That's how badly I need to feel something again, like I'm an addict. Tell me what you want. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, start making games again. Please help me. Please give me some of whatever it is that makes you complete. I want whatever that wholeness is that you just summoned out of nothing and you put into your work. You were complete in some way that I never was. And I want to know how to be a good person. I want to know how not to hate myself. Please. I'm fading.
Okay, I'm going to stop here for a moment and acknowledge a few things. I know that the events of this game are not real as presented. This is Davey Wreden playing a fictionalized version of himself with a fictionalized friend and with fictionalized insecurities and emotional trauma. And what I've been doing here is relating Davey's real-life struggles to this game as if it has any meaning to the themes of it, but evaluating the mind of a creator according to their creations is exactly what this game is cautioning against. The staggering revelation of this honestly almost stopped me from making this video entirely. But with the added context of Davey Wreden's Game of the Year post created around the time of this game's development, it's hard to see how this game could possibly not give us an insight on what he was going through, right? It made me feel like I was just as terrible as the fictional Davey playing through one of Coda's personal games and making unfair assumptions about his meaning behind the game. Maybe this analytical paradox was his intention, or maybe it was just a wacky, subversive game about some game developers with a dark human story. Maybe I might have some of these same insecurities. It really changed the way I think about a lot of things, about the relationship between creators and their creations. And as a creator myself, I began to realize some of my own feelings about the need for validation about my work, especially on this platform of readily quantifiable metrics. Maybe I'm addicted. Maybe I'll spend days feeding on the view count and likes and comments for that sweet, sweet dopamine, and then become self-loathing when it isn't enough. Maybe you're hearing me say this and thinking, he's being so meta right now, that's funny. And really, I'm not. This has really affected me. But it doesn't even matter what I say. You'll just take your own assumptions from this anyway.
Even now, the disease is telling me to stop. Don't show people what a shitty person you are. They'll hate you. If I knew that my life depended on finding something to be driven by other than validation, what would that even be? It's strange, but the thought of not being driven by external validation is unthinkable. Like, I actually cannot conceive of what that would be like. What now? I think I need to go. And I'm sorry, because I know that I said that I would be here and I would walk you through this, but I'm starting to feel like I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot that I need to make up for, and so I'm just gonna... Okay.
This is Wanderstop, where you are playing as Alta, a feisty tournament fighter who has journeyed into the forest to be trained by a legendary warrior to restore her combat dominance. On your way, you get weak and collapse unconscious and reawaken with Borrow, who rescued you from the forest and brought you to his grove. Borrow is a kindly gentleman who asks for your help with the running of his tea shop while you recover. You set about to learn all of the duties involved in tea making. You pick tea leaves from the grove and put them in drying racks. Then you learn about gardening so that you can cultivate fruit to give the tea flavour. Then you get to grips with the impressively large, wacky and unnecessarily elaborate contraption with which you brew the tea. Pump in the water, heat it up, kick the valve to send it to the infuser, throw in your tea leaf ball and fruit flavours, kick another valve and send it ready for pouring. Then pull the lever to send it swirling satisfyingly into the cup. One perfect cup of tea. As you go on, you meet some colourful characters visiting the tea shop and learn more about creating different and exciting fruity flavours to satisfy your customers' needs. There's no money involved, everyone is just here to be helped in some way and are kind and patient. You can take as long as you like to make the tea with the right ingredients as per their request, and even if you get it slightly wrong, they don't seem to mind at all. As someone who's worked in service, this is an especially nice and satisfying part of this job. Brewing tea, making customers happy, tending to the garden, occasional sweeping, your duties are simple, productive and rewarding. I'm not a player of so-called cozy games, but after having such a relaxing and restorative time in this game, I think I've started to understand the appeal a lot more. There's just nothing to worry about here, no score or monetary requirement, no need to be concerned about numbers going up. The cafe and its surroundings are a truly wondrous place to exist in. This kind of calming and peaceful experience feels like just what is needed sometimes. Just making tea. And I'm British, so I love a nice cup of tea. So what does this game say about the lead developer, Davey Wreden? I'm going to go out on a limb and say absolutely nothing. I won't say anything. I don't always need to overanalyze games. It's just a very nice game, and I'm sure it'll have some twists and be subversive in some ways as per his style, but I'm only going to hope for Davey that he is as good and happy as this game is. This is a beautiful, captivating and overall enjoyable game. The kind of game where you can put everything behind you and relax. I feel like I could stay here forever. I think it teaches you that you don't always have to be heading towards goals. You should just stop sometimes. Life can just slow down for a moment, and that's good. That can be okay. I can be okay.